we're gonna have it's a special guest we're having on. He's a friend
Yeah.
of the Football Transfer Forum. It's Ged Searson. Many of you will know Jed. Hopefully he's there. Hiya, Jed.
Hello, Tony. How are you, Ryan? How's things?
Good, thank you. You?
I'm very good. I'm good. Well, bit of a cold, but I'm all right. Yeah,
You're back at home, are you?
I am. I'm back in. I'm back in England for another week or two, and then I'm heading over to Ireland again next week. So
Great.
yeah,
Great.
And you've got a West Ham shirt, is it behind you?
yeah. There's a few different shirts there as well. Why are you highlighting my stand? Just because they might have had a lucky win against one of your local clubs.
Exactly, yeah. It didn't
Monday night.
go really to plan. I saw a bit of the game, but not all of it. I was busy prepping for this. But Jed, what I wanted to ask you, you've been in the scouting world for a long time, and I'm finding that scouting in. Can you talk to us about scouting in the women's game? Because obviously the men's game is very, very structured. There's lots of scouts. There's a lot of coverage of countries. What are you seeing in the women's game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's rapidly developing, especially over the last it's been 3 or 4 years, really now. But I mean, it was a conversation I had many years ago. It was with the guys from Y Scout and Huddle, and they were sort of discussing with me, saying, "Look, there's going to be some big things happening soon." And where it was still a little bit under the radar how the game was developing so fast, and then and they were correct. And myself, even I was working with probably about 5 years ago now, probably during the beginning of COVID. And I had the general manager of West Ham Women, Aidan Boxall, came and did one of my scouting workshops. And he said, no, we're trying to develop and try and keep it, sort of maybe hopefully keep ahead or try and match the bigger teams in the game now. And this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, look, we want to take the game further and start developing. And I started doing some work with them and recommended scouts to the club and so on.
Yeah.
And they work on. They seem to be ahead of the curve at that time, and it is developing. It seems to be very fast now.
And is there many women going into the women's game scouting, or is it men crossing over into the women's game? And what you're seeing?
It's a bit of both. So I think generally, initially, what it seemed to be a lot of men crossing over into the women's game now, but there seems to be more women scouts are now getting in roles in clubs now at senior level and also as parts of scouting teams. I said there's a number of women that I've taught on the workshops that are working for clubs now, south of the border and in Scotland as well.
And are the women's, the women's club that's being integrated into a men's club, are they sharing scouting departments or are they setting up their own structures? What are they doing?
It's generally their own departments. I know there's a few of the clubs. I know, okay, so some of the bigger clubs again, like Man City now, will be sharing some of their analysis. So some of the analysts at the clubs will share information or will cross over. But it generally seems most clubs will have their own scouting departments now that are separate from the men's game as well.
Yeah, and what are you finding just generally in men's and women's game? I saw Brighton. Brighton was sort of the leaders in positional scouting, and they've just had a bit of a restructure in their departments. What are you seeing? The general trends are in scouting at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, that was quite sort of almost disappointing to hear. And I know a lot of the scouts I spoke to in the game, and they were disappointed when they heard that. I was quite almost like champion in what they were doing because they do use data. Also, as you mentioned, they had a lot of scouts working there as well at the club, positional scouts covering different regions as well. And it seems like they had the good balance of data and sort of personal scout recruitment now. And that's why it seemed a bit strange of the developments that happened last week, where I think they've all gone bar. Is it one scout maybe? I think left there now.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of guys on the call today, and looking from the outside, Brighton haven't done bad with the players that they've recruited, have they? They're one of the best clubs in terms of identifying talent and developing that talent in the Premier League environment. And I'm just thinking of the men now.
I mean, and obviously then it was only a month ago now when it was obviously Mr. David Pleat had left Tottenham as well, and obviously his conversation at that time was where he'd basically been replaced with data basically, and he said unfortunately there's still certain parts, or not unfortunately, still fortunately, should I say, there's still parts of the game that does need that personal touch and that general eye looking over a player, but also just the certain characteristics. And both of you guys will know there's certain characteristics data doesn't show,
Yeah.
and certain parts, and then again, and you need that little bit of background knowledge on a player as well. And this stuff can only be found by doing live scouting and connecting with people and finding out more about the player as well. And unfortunately, Brighton have obviously got something. They've obviously got there's an algorithm, whatever it is, they're using something that's very, very good. It would be just disappointing if other clubs try to copy that method without actually having that kind of set.
Like you said, that it wasn't broke, was it? Wasn't broke, if anything. You know,
It didn't sit well. We're looking from the outside, Ryan, I suppose. But you know, and my other question to you, Ged, is the scouting game getting younger and more, you know, more technology? So the scouts have to be very, very computer literate, you know, be able to update and load things in and stuff that I can't do. Is that the case? Is that what you're finding?
I still had one of my best scouts working for me when I was at Grimsby and Orient. I had a lovely gentleman down on the south coast, well into his 80s, doing work for me, and he used to post his reports to me every week. There you go.
Post them.
He used to post them to me every week because he couldn't use email and so on. But yeah, it's a modern game now. Things are changing on, and there's a lot of more technology involved, which is fantastic. And if it's there and you can use it, it's brilliant. But at the end of the day, the person behind the screen or whatever technology you're using, you still have to have that game knowledge, and that can only really be. You can only really have that from actually going out and working and spending time and meeting people and being in the presence of people that have been involved in the game for a long time. And that's a little bit of a worrying trend now that there's people there. There's another new terminology I've picked up recently where you get your social media influencers. There seems to be scout influencers now that seem to have appeared and trying to advise the next generation of scouts. And I'm a little bit concerned sometimes with some of the way the game's going because the actual game knowledge is important.
Yeah. Listen, Ged, thank you so much for that. It was great to have just a little window into the scouting world. By the way, Jed's got a great range of scouting courses. This is like an infomercial, but no, like we always signpost people to Ged and his scouting courses. So leave your contact details in the chat, Ged, and I'm sure you'll have plenty of takers.
So, Tony, Ryan, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone, and I hope to meet you everyone again. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Ged.
Cheers, Ged.